you've been doing for our community and with our community for so long, and I just want to say I appreciate you. And go ahead, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this conversation.
Yeah, so I appreciate this conversation. And of course, the only benefit of this horrific experience of this young woman that Cassie suffered is that we're able to have these conversations and bring it to light, to think about it as a community. So I applaud you for having the conversation. As you know, I can't tune in often, but what I wanted to say is that I see this every day, that domestic violence is particularly horrific for younger women. It is really very true, as you said, for Black women, for Native American women, for Hispanic women. It is at the hands of both male and female partners, and often parents, that young women, particularly ones like Cassie, who are groomed early, become used to this level of violence, sometimes experience it at home at the hands of their parents. It is something that is in the shadows. We don't discuss it. It is family business. And children learn early that this is not something that they can talk about. So you learn it at the hands of your fathers, and then often then at the hands of your partners. So I'm just really glad that we're bringing it out of the shadows to have this conversation. Physical violence of young women by partners or by parents or other loved ones is not okay and results in the death of women. I'm sure that there are many in the audience who are aware that Kim Porter died under fuzzy circumstances, another partner of P. Diddy. And of course, you wonder about that. So I just think it's important that we discuss it, because so many young Black women are taking it on the back, faces, necks, arms, bellies, and they are surviving these things, often losing babies, even at the hands of their partners. And it is something that people just don't discuss.
Is there a way, or from this conversation, are there ways to break the cycle? Usually victimizers have been victims themselves. What advice would you have in terms of, us moving forward and not saying that this is just about Diddy or just about Casey, but those statistics that you talk about shows that this is really about us? How do we break the cycle or address the cycle?
You're doing it right here today. You're putting it front and center. It is part of our conversation. I think the problem is that in almost every community, family violence is a secret. It is not something that you're supposed to talk about. You're supposed to take the violence and then smile, keep it a secret, keep it tucked behind closed doors. I think the very first piece of it is to make it unacceptable and to make it something that is not a secret. If this is happening, the next young woman will say, oh my God, well, Cassie got 100 million, or this happened, or that happened. Let me go tell my teacher, my therapist, my best friend, my cousin, somebody. And I think making it not a secret is the biggest thing, the biggest change that we can make as community members. Talking about it is so important.
One more question, and I know you're on vacation, and I really want to think about this question in terms of how does one reach out for support and seek help? I think that in this situation, Cassie, after that violent attack, made her way back to the hotel, and then the hotel told her, this is alleged, that this has taken place, and almost like she's not welcome on the property, or I have no idea, but how do you seek help and support in the midst of, domestic violence?
That's a great question. Part of the problem, again, is that victims are often protectors. I actually put that in the chat, of the abusers. Well, he was mad at me, and he's so good to me when he does this. She didn't mean to hit me. She actually loves me. She's the only person that really loves me. She loves me enough that she would challenge my terrible behavior, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if we as a community, and now I'm in a tunnel, so I'm hoping it's not too bad in terms of audio, but if we as a community make it acceptable to discuss, then somebody will hear that person and help to bring it to light. It's one of those things that we can't continue to hold as a secret. I can't tell nobody he did this. Girl, he did that to you? Oh my God. Well, I'll help you get through it. Take a couple days off and we'll just put some ice on your face. Why don't you go stay at grandma's house? So the secret keeping is a big part of the problem. So yes, we want to encourage victims to tell, But often victims have been socialized to believe that this is not something they can share, that they will lose this significant relationship of theirs. So one of the biggest problems is that victims are the protectors. And then the protectors of the victims often are also the protectors of the abuser, keeping it a secret because of the guilt and the shame. If you are being beaten, it is something that makes you feel like you're unworthy, or others will know what you've done. And so people keep it a secret, and or that person is the lifeline for you. So you don't share. So we have to make it acceptable to share and to tell and to not keep this a secret. We as a community are all responsible for that. And when I say community, community of healthcare providers, community of first responders, community of church members, pastors, community of friendships, all of us are responsible for not keeping these secrets.
Wow. Thank you, Sister Doe. Have a wonderful vacation. And thank you for, tuning in and giving us those words of not only wisdom, but encouragement. And thank you so very much. I want to go over here and ask Latrell. Latrell, if you're able to hear me also, I want you to. Okay, Latrell, are you there? Yep, I can hear you, Latrell. If you can, go ahead and just go right ahead, or you can put your face up at whatever you want to do. I can hear you.
Okay. When I heard the apology, I felt as though he was very disconnected. I didn't sense any remorse. And it's a ploy to manage his business. It's a ploy to manage his brand. And I thought, after seeing that video, how many other women have suffered? How many other women have he hurt? Because that was severe. That was severe. That was a madman.
Well,
he stumped her.
Yeah, he basically said that, though. He said he was at his lowest point. He gave an explanation in terms of what that was all about. And when you heard it, you weren't necessarily buying it.
No, not at all. I didn't see any remorse. I saw a person that's very disconnected from themselves. What I saw was a person who has lived that lifestyle for so long, who has lived a life where there was no accountability for so long, that he's completely detached from himself. That's a disorder. When we detach from ourselves to the point that we have absolutely no feeling about what we're doing, that's a disorder.
How do we get to that point? And then what are your suggestions in terms of how we move from there? Or do we? How do we even have these conversations?
Well, usually we get there because of our own trauma. People detach when they've been severely traumatized. They detach to survive. They detach to live. You'll hear people who have experienced sexual abuse say that when the abuse has taken place, how they leave their bodies. They leave their bodies so that they can survive it. And so that's a detachment. He appears to be a person that is detached. I don't know if you all remember way back in the day, it talked about Diddy. That's when he was Puff Daddy, beat someone because they wouldn't play his records, and with a champagne bottle hit the man over the head. I don't know if you all remember that. So this violent behavior has been going on for a very long time. It's a bully, and it's violent behavior to get what he wants. And usually that starts from your own trauma, detaching from your own trauma, living in survival mode. I'm going to do anything I have to do to get what I want. I don't care who I hurt. Donald Trump is that way. I mean, if you've ever watched a documentary on him, his childhood was horrible. His childhood was not, they had money, but his father was a very abusive man, and abusive in the sense that there was no love. It was about producing. This is who you need to be. You need to be tough. You don't cry. You do that, that's a form of abuse, to remove a child's emotions. You're not allowed to feel.
And this is kind of like a a question that I don't even know needs an answer, but how let me ask it this way. How much is money and celebrity playing into this? Money, celebrity, and silence. How much does that play into all of this?
Well, it plays into it a great deal because that's the community we live in. We're socialized to believe money and things are everything. You know, we're socialized in our country and in the world to think that money, I mean, unless you're taught something differently, that's the ocean that we're swimming in. Is that money means everything. You know, women stay because of money sometimes. Not always, but sometimes people stay because of money. So, and because we look at these people and we make them sort of gods, and I say we because we're socialized to do that. This is our society. We're socialized to do that. And it's important to have these conversations and have these conversations with kids to let them know that money is not everything. They have to know that. They have to be taught that. Because if someone isn't teaching them that, what are they socialized? What do you see? What do you hear? You know, my Jordans are better than some shoes from Walmart, I guess. Or, you know, I'm socialized to believe that these things are better. And not only are they better, they make me better. I'm better than you because I have designer this or whatever the case may be. And it's all a big lie. It's not true. It's not true.
What I would say is, free thinkers out there, if you want to join the conversation, the link is in the chat. We want to hear your thoughts about, you know, domestic violence, Diddy, the apology, and Latrell. I've got two final questions for you as well. Is does Diddy survive this? Does the brand kind of weather the storm and move forward? And then the second question that I have for you also is, you said talk to our children about this as well. I've got a young son, 7 years old, and I did show him the video, and I said, this is what we're not going to do. Too early or too much. My 7-year-old, in the midst of, young anger, I showed him that video, and I said, this is not what we're going to do. This is not what we're going to be. And my question, Latrell, is that too early or did I do too much? But I will tell you, I did show that video to a young black boy.
I think your second question, I think having the conversation, not necessarily showing the video to someone that young, you can have the conversation about what's appropriate behavior. What we don't hit women. We don't use violence as a way to solve problems. Having that conversation, and your child. Some children are more mature than others, but as far as the brain developing, we don't want to introduce children to things before they are ready because it's not healthy for the brain development.
Okay, and then finally,
and as far as Diddy, I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, and finally, does Diddy weather this storm?
It'll be interesting to see. I think he should call Russell Simmons and get a ticket.
Okay.
Because I don't that was so horrific. And I think that any intelligent person knows that the floodgates are open now. There's more to come. That's not the only tape. That's not the only woman that he's beat. The floodgates are open. And we just have to stay tuned because I think there's more to come. And do I think he'll survive? He'll be fine as far as his living. I mean, he has money. That's fine. But as far as people accepting him and continuing on in his celebrityhood, I don't think so.
Wow. Thank you.
Unless the only way, the truth is the only way to survive these kind of things is to have integrity and character, to be honest. To tell the truth. That's the only way we survive these kind of things. That fake apology won't do it. The only way we survive these things is to come with real integrity and take complete ownership.
Wow. Thank you, Latrell, for your insight. I appreciate you so much and all that you do for, the community and everything that you continue to share. Kira, we're talking about the Diddy apology. We've all got a point of view on this, and I'd love to hear yours. The floor is yours.
So you can hear me, Brother Jeff?
Yep, I can hear you.
Awesome. This was actually a really difficult conversation to have, because on the onset, I wanted to come drop my opinion about it, which I do have one, but it also forced me to have a very reflective dialogue with myself. So the very first lady that you brought on, she talked about the familial aspect of it, how we're raised to be, we're actually raised at least I can speak for the African-American community. I was raised getting whoopings. I was raised that if you get a whooping, you don't go to school and you don't talk about it. We'll keep you home from school if you have a bruise from a whooping, right? It's just like this programming that we've had from our upbringing. And it forces us to not want to speak up, right? Because if you betray your family, then now I have a whole new set of litigation and problems. And I bring that up to say that I'm a mom of 3 teenagers. I'm a single mom of 3 teenagers. And there's been times during this journey where I've been frustrated, where I've been really angry and not knowing how to get that out, So I feel like we need to empower the community to create more resources, support groups, trainings. The last year, I was blessed at my job to have a life coach, and she practiced Stoic principles, teaching you how to remain calm, teaching you how to respond and not react, how to pause, how to take breaths. And there were times I had to talk to her specifically about parenting and say, how can I channel this anger? How can I maneuver? And the reason why I say it was difficult is because you look at Diddy and Cassie and say, oh my gosh, that was super duper terrible. He really did a number on her. Don't get me wrong. I've never done that to any of my children. But there have been times that I can admittedly say that I've gotten quote unquote violent. I might grab my kid. I might have smacked my daughter, and it caused her to go to the school and say something to someone. And now, even though I wasn't trying to hurt her, now I'm in an office having to have people in my business because I didn't know how to handle, that anger. So more than anything, I just wish that the healthcare system, the mental wellness part of our healthcare system was more accessible, because we just have people who are at their wits' end, who don't have the tools, because it's not something that's taught to us in school as it should be. It's not something that's passed down generationally from our families. A lot of us come up in that type of violence. All of it is violence at the end of the day, verbal abuse, whatever it is, because we are dealing with so much outside stress on top of any unexpected problem. We just need to be given the tools to know how to cope with that and how to manage our own emotions. Now, Diddy, I think there was drugs and alcohol. Maybe he was drunk, they said. But I can just own my part and say, as a mom, the last couple of years, I've really tried to work on how to approach when I feel stressed or I feel angry better, because at the end of the day, it'll continue to be passed along. And after this call, I want to sit down with my kids and say, hey, the times that I've reacted in this manner, or the times that I might have hit you or pinched you or whatever, that goes from a young age. There's ways that, the elders grab you in public. If you're cutting up, they might pinch you on the back of the arm. That little subtle stuff is teaching our kids that there's a certain level of violence that's acceptable, and really there's not. We have to learn how to better deal with those moments where we are really struggling with whatever it is in those situations.
Kira, I want to ask a couple of questions to you about these statistics. 1 in 4 women, 25%, are experiencing, and the key word in this particular statistic is severe intimate partner physical violence, sexual violence, and all of that. It's not minimal. It's not name calling, or I don't know. It's severe, whatever that word means. That adjective is there. I have not been in circles or I haven't even been in conversations with men who talk about the violence they inflict on their partner. I just haven't heard those. And I know in the past we've put together at Brother Jeff's Cultural Center sacred sister circles where sisters are having these conversations. And with that being said, as a Black woman, are you hearing about this more, or are a lot of people more about dealing with this in silence? How does this conversation happen in the Black woman to woman peer group?
That's a really good question. I will say this. I recently had someone very, very, very close to me that knows my experience in my marriage. And luckily, my ex-husband and I, we have come to terms with what that was. And I didn't really get physically abused, but the verbal and emotional abuse was very, very strong in my marriage. And so somebody else I know knows that experience. And now going forward in time, knows that that was my experience and reached out to me to say, hey, Nakira, I need to talk to you. Like, this is what's happening. That's what's happening. For me to be the person that she came to actually shocked me. But she's went to somebody in confidence who she thought she could tell it to that wouldn't necessarily blow up the spot. Like, and it's hard because I tried to tell her what I feel like she needed to hear. Like, hey, you're not safe. This could escalate. Like, you're saying this person's putting hands on you. You're saying, but she's like, but I love this person. It's that stockholder syndrome, that, grooming, even as adults. A lot of this, again, when I talked to her recently, she said, Nakira, what's crazy is when we grew up, in my household, I had older brothers. They, we fought them. I watched, members of my family fight. So now, fast forward into her relationship where she's being physically abused. She's like, but Nakira, this is how I was taught to handle that. If somebody hits you, we just hit back. So I feel like there is that circle of sisterhood. And I feel like women specifically don't want to call somebody that they feel like is going to judge. That's the really biggest part. They want somebody that they feel like they can trust. But at the end of the day, the hardest part is until that person is ready, like, what can we really do? That's why I think there should be the therapy aspect of it, because I can tell my friend all day, you need to leave, you need to leave. Many of us have been in those circumstances where somebody's coming, we tell them to leave and they don't. So what is going to bolster that person's confidence so that they feel confident and safe enough to leave? That's like the biggest part of it for me, from my experience with people who've had truly really bad abuse in relationships.
A final question for you, Kira, and thank you for all that you're sharing. I want to talk about the music industry. I want to talk about power, and I want to talk about money and what takes place to be involved with the power and the money and the risks and the compromises and all of the things that go with it. And the more money you have, it seems as though you've got less accountability and more impunity, and people celebrate you knowing you have shortcomings, no matter how abusive those shortcomings might be, because what you're doing feeds a lot of people. How do you navigate, because you're an entertainer and you're in the world of, all of this and the drinking and the, all of it's out there, you know what I mean? But that's a specialized world. How do you navigate it? And then also, what advice would you give to anybody that's trying to be a part of that industry and wants to keep a level of integrity?
It's really hard, right? So the funny thing is, in this situation, as you said earlier, Diddy, it appears, because I don't have all the facts of that whole relationship, but it seemed to be very, very predatory, right? But to your original point, everyone has a hand in it. The people who are watching this, keeping silent, because oftentimes there's a monetary benefit, those people are just as predatory. There's something to benefit them in it. So they'd rather hush and change the meter of their moral compass because there's some direct benefit to their livelihood in it, right? So it's funny, I chose Sankofa as the symbol for my nonprofit. And in Sankofa, there's another African principle of Stoicism that talks about how connected that we all are, right? Like community, everything that happens to one of us happens to all of us. And I feel like we've lost that connection, that if Brother Jeff over here is going through something, that in turn directly impacts the community. We are too hands off with what's going on within our community. And so to answer your question, as far as the industry is concerned, it's weird because we know money is the root of all evil. It's not evil in itself, but it drives so many things. And so if people feel like they're going to lose that access to something that greatly benefits them monetarily, which may be something that is taking care of their family, I feel like we have to figure out and find a value system that everybody can subscribe to. And that's the biggest part. Not everybody subscribes to the same moral system, self-reflection, accountability, all of those things. So I feel like it's forever going to be a problem. However, I will say, as far as myself being in the entertainment scene, nightlife, drinking, there's been times I've been out and about, and my friends and I who came in groups of places have been drugged. We've gone to the hospital. tested one of us because we all felt like something wasn't right, been drugged. Those abuses happen in those situations. Rapes happen in those situations. So what I will say to any young person or a person my age or of any age that's in the nightlife scene, in the entertainment scene, and just overall, you have to do what's right for your body, for your mind, for your spirit. You have that protect your energy. I feel like it's just like a generic thing thrown around, but we have to do so much better at protecting ourselves and protecting those around us. I don't know if that answers your question, but there's so much tied into it that we just have to be better. I feel like we're so disconnected, and our roots are very much connected. Like African roots are very familial, spiritual. And I feel like, I don't know if that's a Black in America thing, that we've gotten away from feeling protective over each other. It's like we disconnect. It's not my problem, not my business. I don't have anything to do with it.
You know, final, Kira, as we finish this, and everybody who wants to join the conversation, you're more than welcome to hit the link. It's right there and it's available. What would you have, or what advice would you have given your younger self when you were going through this? Now that you are older, what advice, and then how do you take care of yourself, and even you know, I don't want to use the word forgive, but support yourself, because a lot of guilt is attached to some of the things that we go through. How would you encourage your younger self, and then how would you support and continue to support your older self?
So what's funny is the forgiveness aspect. Like I just was telling somebody the other day, I feel like I've forgiven my ex-husband for anything that has happened in my marriage, but forgiving myself was the harder part, because I feel like there's signs and there's things that you see that you disregard. For me specifically, the younger version of me grew up without a father. So there was a lot of stuff in my marriage that I stuck out because I didn't want my kids to grow up how I grew up without a father. So that caused me to stay longer. But if I even go before that, I would tell myself, if you're a young person, like my kids' age, 17, 18, 19, go live your life. A lot of us are trying to be in relationships to fill a gap from our past and our childhoods. I try to encourage my children, relationships, partners, all that stuff is going to be there. Right now, you need to live. You don't even know yourself. And if I look back, 19-year-old Nakira that met my ex-husband didn't know myself. Learn yourself, travel, do all of that. It actually affected how far I went in my music. I fully believe that, because I was so focused on like having something that I didn't have. So I'm just trying to encourage anybody, give yourself grace. But when somebody shows you time number one, and sometimes that's not even a hit, like looking at things like, how does this person that you're dating interact with their mother? How does that person regard their sisters? How does that, because those were all the type of signs that I was giving. It wasn't like, oh, somebody hit me one time and then I should have known. Oh, well, he's not very close with his mom. Oh, he regards his sisters in this manner. This is how he speaks to them. Like, it should have been a cue for me, but it wasn't. But those are also things that nobody really taught me either. So give yourself grace and just try to focus on your goals. But, you know, life is life, and people are going to continue to do what they think is right. So grace is the biggest word I can say I've had to have for myself along this healing journey of finding my new self as a mother and as a woman who's still learning and growing every day.
You know, Kira, what's very interesting is just thinking about, and this is from, you know, the behaviors that we saw taking place that Casey dealt with. That wasn't just isolated and just picked up in the spur of the moment, in my opinion. I think that there was a long tradition or history of a person being who they are. And sometimes when a person shows you who they are, that's actually who they are.
Yeah, believe them. The first time. That's what the quote says. The first time. You can't leave that part off.
The first time. Kira, thank you so much. It's great hanging out with you, and I will talk to you again real soon, all right?
I appreciate it. Thank you, Brother Jeff.
A difficult conversation, a very important conversation. And again, we are talking about Diddy and the apology, but this is larger than Diddy and the apology. This is larger than Cassie and what we saw in those videos. The difference is this was captured on video. The heartbreak is the hotel chose to suppress and even support, and I would say is equally as complicit and should be issuing an apology or being held accountable. And whoever took money to cover up, if in fact this is true, the abuse of a black woman or any woman or anybody in support of power, I think that that's what and also Kira and Taj and the callers have indicated, is that sometimes, it's not just an individual, it's an entire network that enables the abuse of those who are experiencing domestic violence. So I'm going to end by just saying again, 1 in 4 women, that's 25%, experience severe intimate partner physical violence, sexual violence, stalking, injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and STDs. Sister Ann talked about those of us who realize these statistics, and we're not even talking about those that have been killed, those who are losing their lives, those who are even outside of these numbers. In the U.S., approximately 10 million people in the U.S. experience domestic violence, and this equates to about 20 people per minute being physically abused by an intimate partner. The age demographics, women 20 to 24 are at the highest risk. And those are those ages where you're really coming into who you are and perhaps standing up for who you've become, while someone is attempting to break you from being who you are, 20 to 24. And then income, the lower the income, the higher the incidence of domestic violence. And again, American Indian women and Black women are at higher rates than any others to experience domestic violence. And so with that being said, we've got a lot of work to do. I remember we had sacred sister circles. Perhaps it's time to do more of those if we're not doing it. We've got to talk to our sons. We've got to talk to our community. We've got to talk to those who are around us. And, when we're talking about maybe the challenges we're having in relationships, we might want to follow up with, and how are you handling those challenges? Because everybody has challenges in life. And if you're handling those challenges with violence, that is an indication that perhaps, well, not even perhaps, absolutely, there's going to need to be some help. And there is help available. And so that being said, thank you for everybody who participated in this conversation. There are a lot of folks inside the chat that you can reach out to that are resources and, can be of support one to another. But again, we've got to have circles. We've got to break some cycles. We've got to get away from the fact of the more money you have, the more things you're able to do that others are not able to do. And then also, when having money, using it as leverage and a weapon and violently against those we say that we love. That being said, I don't think that the Diddy brand survives this, nor should it. If in fact it was built on a lot of what we saw in that video, those houses that are built on sand, they just can't stand. Based on what we're hearing about in terms of lawsuits and charges and, Homeland Security running up on your property. When does Homeland Security come to your house? Like, that in and of itself, when Homeland Security shows up at your house, those dynamics are problematic. And at the same time, thinking about, we as a community in its totality, we've got to work toward all of us being the best we can be. However we get there, we got to work on all of us being the best we can be. And that means when you see me in shortcomings, do some things to adjust my crown, and I could do the same for you. As opposed to kicking one another and pushing each other down. Let's figure out a way to rise and lift each other up. And so with that being said, if you go down swinging, and that's an allegory. Rumble, young man, women, and community. Rumble.